Good afternoon once again. It is with great pleasure that we welcome all our audience, everybody who has joined us. This is the third session, and Anja will the real embellishment of this session. She is from Denmark, and she's now in Denmark. It is with great pleasure that we welcome her here, and I believe that her presentation is going to be very interesting. And the subject of the presentation is as follows. The case is that she works for Heimtextil Frankfurt in Denmark. She is also the creator of trends, Heimtextil, and she will share with us some forecasts for trends and colors, and will also touch upon history about consumers' expectations and global changes. So the floor is given to Anja, who is also the developer of the business lifestyle and the general director of SPOTT Agency. Anja, welcome once again. You are the embellishment of our session, and I'm sure you are also very competent. So,
are you ready for me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. So, warm greetings from Denmark. I hope that you can all hear and see what it is that I have to deliver today. Thank you very much for having me, Heimtextil Russia. Of course, familiar to the Heimtextil world, as I think you also said in the introduction that I am part of the Heimtextil Trend Council in Frankfurt. But for now, I am in Denmark, where we are in my studio here in a town called Silkeborg, where I will be presenting from. And my topic is 10 consumer and interior trends that we're going to look at today. So a view from that, and also to get some of the perspectives of what it is that I am working with. Tell you a little bit about me and my background. I run the company SPOTT, which is a trend agency working from turning trends into business. Are we doing okay? Can I do the slide continuation?
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Good. It was just that it changed. Good. So SPOTT is my agency that I run out of here in Denmark, which I've been doing for the past 6 years, but worked in the field of trend forecasting and color forecasting, as well as consumer behavior within the last 14 years. So I help navigate I help lifestyle customers and clients navigate the whole difficult, complex trend area of turning trends into business. So basically what it is that I help them with is what we call lifestyle business development. So linking business and future trends and consumer behavior together. I am working from these 3 fields, as you can see. So of course it comes out to business consultancy, where it's, for example, is product development, helping them develop either their collection within interior or fashion or lifestyle related industries to develop that. Then it also, of course, future trends, like we are here today. I give numerous presentations about how I see the trend developing and what trends it is that we're gonna see in the near future. So, of course, on an inspirational level, product development, of course, also when it comes into trend presentations and written articles about what trends in the lifestyle sector is coming up. But I also have an area of consumer behavior about the understanding of emotional consumer analysis and how to implement that. So that is also a topic that I use and help my clients with, because we, of course, have to understand which consumer we are talking about and talking to, and what kind of products that it is that they would like to have in the future. So it's really about understanding that as well, going through to presentations and seminars and product development within consumer behavior to help all of these companies navigate this trend space. Because for me, it's not about just spotting the trends that is easily done in a digital world today. It's about actually targeting it to the individual brand or the individual collection or the individual company, helping them navigate which trend actually makes the business for them. So basically that is what SPOTT is doing. But going on to the topic that we have had, this was actually a first slide and a topic of a presentation I did back in January 2020. And for us now being here in September 2020, that feels like 100 years back and a long, long time ago, hence to everything that has happened. But what the forecast was that it was a time of redefinition and instability. And it was a matter of, I talked about, are we going to reach higher levels, as you can see the little man jumping, or are we going to fall into the big, deep ground? And I guess that's what has happened, but I think that we will be able to climb up again. But it's definitely a completely different world that we are looking at. I will not dread you with all of those analysis that is out there and all of those sentiment analysis that's been taken on through the COVID-19 crisis. But I want to talk about also some of the things that we're seeing is changing slowly and what we maybe also can expect in a longer term. I want to put attention to this graph here. Because out of every crisis comes innovation, as we can see also the past 2 decades has given us a lot of interesting topics and also a lot of interesting elements when we look back in history. And I believe that this is also what we're going to see, that this corona COVID-19 crisis and the pandemic will also spark that. We're beginning to see it in a little bit of a slow pace, but also some small elements that we're going to have a closer look at. For example, this one was quite an interesting example to that, that we're going to see that we have maybe being able to smile again with the CME 95 product where we're seeing a mask becoming in a transparent silicone instead, that we have to wear those where we're actually not being able to see each other's smiles, to see each other's facial expressions, which I think from a consumer perspective and also from a behavioral perspective is a really interesting challenge, and it's also a very deep and important challenge that we have to address. So this is just a great example of how we're maybe gonna innovate us out of it. But we can also maybe see, if we go a little bit closer to the textile industry, just an example of that kind of innovation that we're seeing coming through from a Danish brand called Nortifaq, that they are gonna have produced towels or innovative towels where we are seeing that they have added some antimicrobiological elements so that the towels won't pick up bacteria from the usage that we see. So this is just one thing, and we're seeing that products are becoming or having some kind of protective layer or a protective function, and that is definitely something that we are looking for in this direction that we are going in the future. So these small sparks of inspiration and innovation is something that we're probably going to see more of, and also on a larger scale is what I think we should expect. And we don't know yet what it is. We're still in the midst of the storm. So we will have to wait and see what will actually come out there. But there is, of course, pandemic interior influences that is already influencing where we are going right now. I will have to say that I'm first going to take up some more business-related trends, and then in the end, I'm going to tell you and zoom in on the more aesthetical side, where I have 3 more design and color trends that I'm going to go into, and also what I think is relevant for the time coming of 21-22. But first up here, some of the more societal and more consumer-related trends that we're going to see in this relation and in this time. So it's definitely been influenced if we're looking to the world of interiors and the home. The home has definitely been given a new purpose and a new context and a new direction. The home has all of a sudden become the headquarter of everything, from being that we left and for many hours, to being a place where we're spending a lot of hours and navigating our whole life from. And that is something that's definitely taken up and been important. And this image that you're seeing here is an image from the local IKEA that we have here. When they reopened again, that people were actually queuing up, lining up to see and to get access to products again. So it's definitely an evidence that the home, it has become super important, and even maybe more important than it was before. What we definitely will see that is also something that we've seen in the usage of Zoom backgrounds, whether it being digital or having that backdrop to all of our digital settings, as we're also doing today, becomes important. So either we're doing it in the real world, really restyling and redecorating our home to create that perfect backdrop and setting, or we take on a digital, more homey version of it. So again, the home is playing a huge role and being very much influenced by the pandemic. We're also seeing it in furniture design, that we are actually being influenced in design directions from the pandemic. We're seeing here, connected by design, a table that is supposed to be like, instead of the dinner table has been taken over and become that headquarter command table. They thought that, well, maybe we can design a new version where we can see and actually also maybe hide all of the things that we don't need to have out 24/7. So this is an interesting task on a furniture element that is directly impacted by the changes that the pandemic has caused. We're also, of course, seeing very much social distance being practiced out and much more. So this is definitely also going to influence how we are going to design space in the future. So the future is very much going to see spaces change. We're going to see coffee shops that is more individually orientated, like the Gaede coffee cafe. And we're going to see that how people can actually serve themselves, so that we don't have that interaction and interchange, and that they can serve them more individually and also in a more protective way. So that is just one example of it. We see an example here, 23 seats out of Beijing, that didn't come as a part of actually the pandemic. This was developed actually pre-pandemic. But it is a concept that is really a survival scale in the pandemic world, as it actually offers protection on a single basis. But it has actually been developed more to the single going outers to a restaurant, that they would have a place in the spot to eat. But it merges perfectly into how we're going to view hospitality restaurant spaces in the future. A playground also, as a great example of how we're seeing that we can also have a playground and interact, but in a new way, with a more individual and more closed way that the children can play. So this is just a prospect, but it's a prospect that really highlights how we're seeing that the pandemic is influencing how we can actually design spaces and furniture and outdoors interactivities. The last one here, also in the educational area where we're viewing. So everything is going on as we're seeing that is going from very, very big open areas to areas where we can have more secluded meetings or more secluded groupings where you can sit and being framed off from some of the other participants that are in here. So we're going away from that direction and into something new, where we both may be having the open spaces, but we can also have the smaller spaces and the more secluded spaces for us. Then, of course, if we're looking at also the trends that is going on, whether the COVID-19 pandemic or not. sustainability was, of course, a major topic and definitely still is. So this is definitely one of the most important trends that we're also seeing coming through and in the future, and important to address. It's also important to address that this is not going to just disappear while we figure out what we're going to do with the coronavirus, as this quote from Lucia Shear, who's a group executive at the sustainable consultancy of Futera, is actually saying that climate change isn't going to go delay while we sort out the coronavirus. So this is an important message also, that this will just hopefully accelerate through this time, but also we're going to see that this will not definitely just disappear. So we need to still go on this agenda. I think an eye-opening from a consumer level has definitely been this, and these satellite images that we have seen from space about what happened during lockdown, so around the world, that it's actually been shown that we can see that the effects, of course, that we are causing from having a world that goes around is impacting the climate. So I think that some of this is definitely going to be part that is going to accelerate the consciousness about sustainability and the imperative to do something about it, particularly also within the lifestyle industry. And we're also seeing that actually the consumers are willing to change and actually change their consumption behavior to support sustainability to a much higher degree, which has come about also a little bit pre-pandemic, but definitely also through the pandemic and the importance of that. And that is just according to a study done by Nielsen, where we're seeing it's up 58%. Further to this, we're also seeing that the McKinsey post-consumer COVID-19 sentiment survey looked into that 2/3 of the consumers are actually saying that it's become more important to also handle and to do as a really important priority to combat this following the COVID-19. So it is definitely something that is on people's agenda. It's top of mind, and it is something that is also being driven from this direction. We're seeing it particularly really flourishing in fashion, even though fashion has been really yelled at industry regarding sustainability. We're seeing concepts, we're seeing new designs, we're seeing an awareness coming through at a faster pace actually than we are in interiors. So we're beginning to see that the whole aesthetic, which is something that is necessary also to drive sustainability, is changing. So I think that it's a great, interesting to see, as also as fashion and interiors are kind of parallel lifestyle industries, and that they follow each other, and they also inspire each other. This is a concept by Anna Becker, who is working, of course, with surplus styles, coming from what it is that we can do with surplus styles and maybe put them back together and then create a new collection from that. Something that I think interiors can be super inspired from. But we're also seeing very much on the material side that we're developing new materials. We're seeing that from Dutch Design Week here that we're having actually a completely living home. So we are seeing that out of mycelium, which is a fungi-based material, that we can actually grow a living home that can actually mend itself, which is of course a little bit more of a futuristic, but there's a lot going on within the material research that we are viewing. And has promising perspectives for the future, and that we can actually take up the sustainability in a different way. We're also seeing that waste is something that can help us redefine also what we are looking into materials. This is a material that we're seeing from Brienne, a French designer who has been working with waste from the marine harbor life, gathered and collected that, and then purified it, and then made beautiful tiles out of it. So this is also where we're seeing that what is actually the new resources for new materials, and that can definitely be waste. Further to this, we're also seeing that that we're seeing a material like this, where we're working with glass and eggshells, that we can actually do new properties, by Stephen Akun, who has made these acoustic glass tiles that has a new prosperity just by investigating how these two materials will actually react to each other, and with the organic materials that we're using in it, also a much more sustainable direction for future materials. Even challenging packaging and plastics also, as we're also seeing how we can actually do that via a biodegradable packaging by Notpla. Maybe some of you saw the bubble water that they did some few years ago now. They fine-tuned their concept and come up with this biodegradable packaging that works from kind of an algae based material. So we're definitely seeing new materials that can actually create a more promising future also within the interiors direction. Bioiridescent sequence, your by Elisa Brunato, is another example of that, of how we can actually create a sequin, of course, both related to fashion and a plastic product that we have come by her to actually use via bio processes to get that shimmering feel without necessarily using the products that we usually do for sequins. So this is also a great example of the sustainability path that we are in. And we can actually come rather far. These are also just some of the companies that are working with sustainable or even regenerative materials, and it's an example of how we can actually put that together as a complete home. So of course this is not mainstream, it's not volume yet, but this is what we're hoping that the direction can come to, that we are going to be able to develop durable and scalable materials from a lot of these lab orientated products that we are seeing, that they just mature into a market where we can get them into a broader reach. From sustainability over to another big hit is also digitalization. So of course, we are digital right now. We're doing that. We've taken a whole fair, a whole physical fair, and turned it into a digital event. And that is, of course, something that is going on right now, and also, of course, accelerate with massive pace as we're seeing it. We're talking about a digital by default, digital by design. We're seeing large corporations like Shopify and even also Facebook who are talking about that digital is their default, so that you are basically a digital connected, or you're working from home digitally by default and not necessarily as the alternative. So things have been switched around, which is going to cause definitely a lot of changes also in our behavior. If we don't have to pendle or go to an office, if we don't have to go into the physical world as much as we did before, then that is going to impact definitely how we are behaving, and also the needs and the products that we're going to have. Of course, for the home industry, definitely is a positive sign, as the home will continue to be much more of a home office, as you can see here. So again, it's back to that home as a headquarter direction that will just become stronger and stronger. If we're seeing here also, we're seeing, of course, design weeks becoming much more a digital experience, just like the fair that we're using. So we're really exploring and we're really innovative, and that comes back to the innovation out of a pandemic, that we're seeing the speed of innovations within this digitalization is going really, really fast. And it's actually a very much experimenting and prototyping kind of way. We're trying what can work and gaining experiences with it, and as we go along. And that's a super interesting process. And we're seeing that smaller brands are taking up the challenge with not having maybe retail and physical retail and having customers come to them, that they change the way around, and that they come to the customer through the channels that the customers are already on, expanding their digital presence also via video and new kind of TV shopping, as we're seeing also that Instagram has offered. So that is also a part of this digitalization. And then we can also see that maybe it becomes even more a digital with the digital gallery here. So I will try and see if this one will let me go through. So us moving around in a digital universe here as a gallery, and that could be any kind of setting, really allows us to explore it and also become very, very close and in depth with things in a digital way. We're just trying to explore that, and we're trying to get that and as close as the physical will come to the direction that we are seeing in the real physical world, then it becomes much more interesting. So this is developing in a really, really fast pace, and that we're seeing that it will come along. So digitalization as long as sustainability is a very big thing. And then as we become much more digital, it's also maybe going to cause a post-urban trend and direction as we're seeing. So if we are accessible much more digitally, maybe it's not as necessary for us in the future to have to concentrate ourselves in the urban environments. We can be reached in different ways and not necessarily have to put together. This is a very long-term forecast, but I think in the long term it will have an effect on urbanization. And we're seeing, of course, that wildlife, and this is just some statistics from graphic image search banks about how it's actually become very, very high and very popular, the wildlife, and then combined with that we can actually be accessible and solve our things digitally, we will see that things will maybe come to a more important and then actually a city quitter culture, as this book is actually focusing on the people who are quitting the city and moving to the rural community and landscape as a counterculture to the big urbanization. And this could possibly also be given some more speed as to this post-pandemic universe. Another thing in line with this post-urban society is also we're seeing a rise in crafts. Crafts has been, of course, an inspiration also for the aesthetic trends that we have. But it's also becoming like a spirituality for us. It's a safe haven. It's a place for mental well-being that we turn into the crafts universe. So we're looking into what we call like a craft spirituality, and that we're looking to that becoming interesting in the future. So what that is all about is that we're seeing that it is going back to those very human skills and those basic elements that crafts is giving you. It's giving a feeling of creation when you're actually creating this. So this was just an image to get you in the line of that. If we're seeing it where it is merging into, then we're really seeing things from, of course, classic elements of craft making. We're seeing that we want things to grow. We're seeing also a big increase in gardening, in florals and plants, and making that a part of your life, whether you are living with a garden or not, or you're making it indoors or outdoors. The plant sector is definitely also on the rise in this area. We are also seeing that the creation within the textile, the crochet, and that whole movement is on the rise. So it's not really a matter of what it is, but it's about understanding that people find kind of a spirituality within the crafts area. We're seeing that some of the new things from Cold Drop Yards to London is the creation of terrariums, also related into the plant section to where we are. We're also seeing that actually, if we were to look at some of the YouTube top subscriber lists, that 5-minute crafts is really, really up there on the high levels. And it's linked into the high 2 direction, not only just entertainment, but how to is super important also when we're looking at consumer behavior coming into the future. So 5-minute crafts there as a channel and direction. So this was, and excuse my coughing here, I'll just take a glass of water and to be ready for the interior trend. So this was kind of an overview of some of the business trends and the consumer orientated trends that we have. So a lot of acceleration into sustainability, digitalization, some consequences for the post-human universe. We're going to see having some interesting innovations probably coming through in that lineup. But what it then means for some concrete interior trends is what I will be looking at for now. The first one up is very much linked to the craft spirituality that I just mentioned as a consumer behavior trend. So, and in the likes of that, our home becomes important and the whole gardening and that direction. Basic home is a trend that we're seeing is really in tune with the pandemic and also the consequences and how the future is actually going to be. So basic home is about really taking the home to a basic level, understanding what is the basics and caring for what the basics of the home really is. Even though it has to take up a lot of different functions now, we're seeing that it also needs to go back into, and definitely something we're seeing out of Scandinavia as being very, very popular. It's a direction that we're seeing from fashion as well. So fashion is really also a key inspirator for interiors. And this is also where fashion is moving a little bit also ahead of the interiors. But we've seen these prairie looks, we've seen these cottage looks, we've seen this going with nostalgia a little bit back in time to where things were less digitalized and less in a more nostalgic direction for that. So this is a kind of not necessarily a counter trend, but it is a counter trend because it's some lost values that we have. And as our digitalization rises as part of our lives and becomes much more influencing of the usage of our time, a longing for something that is analog and something that is non-digital and much more basic becomes efforts. And that's how we're seeing that this is reflecting within the fashion also direction we're seeing right now. We want to look at how the colors will also develop within the basic home. So it's a lot of beautiful gray pastels that we're having in here, from the bone white on top to a kind of a pure cashmere to a peach quartz that is kind of a little bit strong, but still having a little bit of on a dusty side. The autumn leaf color is something that I see is a very important Scandinavian color, as it's been coming through for a little while now, really hitting mainstream. So that kind of a tomato cream, it's a color that is rather important. But also, of course, the green that you're seeing, basil and green moss, as part of this direction, as we really want to put more greens into our interiors and have the green plants as part of it. Soybean and bone white are reflecting this more direction, going away from the bright white and more into the off whites and the yellow whites that we have. And that is also a direction that is really, really strong at the moment. So nothing should be bright still, right? We want something that is much more warm. So that is an interesting direction for that. In Basic Home, this is an example from the Dutch Design Week I participated in last year, where we're seeing that we're also really highlighting some of the human skills. Again, we're seeing that we want to do things more by hand and more in a sustainable and more clean way. So this is Studio Nengehochlit, where we're seeing that they are dyeing recycled cotton shirts into dyes. So we're using some more natural dyes, which is something that is inspiration, both coming from more sustainable, going back to basics and that whole craft spirituality about doing things yourself. And that is then inspiration for the direction within this trend. So we're seeing very natural textiles, we're seeing natural settings, we're seeing low-key inspirational, we're seeing basics as the elements that we want in our interiors and also within the interior textiles. Nothing complex, much more just on the natural side. This is also what we're seeing in these slides from the most the scribble expression with prints and directions to much more on the craft and homemade self side, to recycled wrapping paper that it is really, really good, that it shows a worn and torn expression that we're seeing right here from Matthias Winkler in the research process. So these are some of the shapes and the colors and the surroundings that we're seeing. This was a project done at a music festival here in Scandinavia, in Denmark, in Roskilde Festival by two artists, Frederik Nystrup Larsen and Oliver Sundquist, where they also recycled a lot of textiles to do a pavilion with a net, and also making use of natural dyes as an inspiration to this. We're seeing also Norman Copenhagen combining this more basic home direction into a styling. So combining it with what is maybe more strict and straightforward and the surroundings that we have, and then warming it up with some of these basic home elements, with much more naturally expressing in textiles and design, hence also the colors. So that combination is also really, really an interesting direction for basic home. Zooming in on some of the textiles that we're seeing, yes, then it has this natural colored vibe. We're seeing the colors flowing into each other, really handcrafted and almost homemade expression. Nothing is solid. Some the colors are just as dense or as light as the process has made them. So nothing needs to be super perfect. We're embracing these imperfections that is in these expressions, and using these beautiful pastels, almost sun-bleached tones on top of each other. So it's super delicate and beautiful expression within this basic home direction. We're seeing also materials become a direction of where we're using natural materials, the jute tiles by Atelier LVDW, where we're using the jute textiles and creating a tile out of this. So from one material to another, adding a little bit of discrete color, but getting that whole structure and tactility within the tile from a textile is also that very basic way to create an expression that is super contemporary and super modern still, but very basic in its construction. Further to this, we're also seeing various examples of textiles with those homemade done. We're seeing papier-mâché coming up again in lighting design from Maria Fieter. We're seeing that we're mashing up almost any kind of material left over that we have to create pots and vases, so that we have that basic way of construction in the products that we're looking for. So again, imperfections with these beautiful sun-bleached leftover colors in both interior products, but also in interior textiles. Second up here with the design and color trends that I will focus on this in this presentation is home and heritage. Home and heritage, of course, closely to the home, but also to our heritage. The longing for looking back at our heritage of what it is that we come from, reviving heritage elements again, patterns, colors, and shapes in a more modern context is what we are looking for. The colors here are a lot deeper, hence making room for some of that heritage feel that comes from darker woods, for example, or darker colors and darker settings. But it's mixed up with some interesting teal colors, for example, or the cork color that has this kind of pink vibe to it, but it has also a combination of the clay direction. Again, an off-white, the Angora, the Angora white up here is driving that. Black and white is in here, but a little bit less, take up less room than some of the other colors. So we are looking at, in many examples, some very multicolored expressions. So we want to use colors in this direction. Examples that we're seeing here is, of course, where we are embracing some historical elements or prehistoric ways of telling stories through this setting that we're seeing from Meisterwork, where we're combining it and making it very contemporary with a more minimalistic and strict, clean way of styling it. But we have those clear historical references that bring in a curiosity and also brings in some very interesting elements to a setting. It makes it more alive than just a pale white wall. The rural countryside can also be found in this home and heritage direction that we have. So the whole setting about the wooden table in the kitchen, the open door into the landscape, and hence also the bust that you can see as a decorative element in the backside, is that we are highlighting the historic or the heritage ways of actually making decor and remembering people from where before we had photography and all that direction. A little bit more ornamented is also what we're seeing here. We have room for. So again, it's a balance about making it with a contemporary vibe, but still maintaining some heritage elements. Great example of this is made from Studio Yellow Dot. We're seeing that they have created some objects that is actually coming into the usage of all of our memories. So all of those small things that we find when we are maybe together as a family, a rock on the beach, or a little bit of a project the kids have made in school. These boxes and exhibition stands are made to actually exhibit all of our beautiful memories. So this is also a way of preserving, which is a direction within the home and heritage direction also. How can we preserve our heritage? How can we preserve our memories, and how can they be part of this direction that we have within our interiors? And how can we cherish it and have it as a part of it? Also a direction here, we're seeing that the combination of heavy textiles and velours, heavy paintings is a direction to this, and also, of course, florals and the decorative elements is part of home and heritage.
We have just 3 minutes left, and we have questions from the audience.
The Brera in Milano, where we were highlighting the big painting in the backdrop, making that part of the interior design. So we really want history to be very present. The same thing goes for Studio Pepe and Alcantara that did this direction of where we're seeing things being interesting in that way. The painting, again, coming through with also crystal as an element done by Studio Vanderpoort. Hotels here, Villa Fox Hotel, working with architecture from historic times and making that into a wallpaper, as you can see in the backdrop. Textiles, of course, also going back into the archive and looking for that and creating those textile expressions that really have a clear heritage feel. To the home and heritage is also that we're seeing that bloom and that florals is a very important motif that we're going to see in the future. So that is also something that we have to look for into that direction. And inspiration here can be Cabana that we're seeing have a great culture and lineup for the uses of flowers and really mixing them beautifully together. Also, both embroidery, printed, all over, painted in many directions, and using the florals like that. More inspiration coming through here in this lineup with flowers.
У нас время оканчивается, заканчивается.
The time is over, and we have questions from the studio, from our audience. We have to kindly ask you to skip probably some slides of your presentation because we have no time. I do understand that you have a lot to say, but we have to skip it and come to questions. Just skip it to the end. Please skip your presentation to the end. Please keep your presentation to the end. And the first question. Do you have social networks and Instagram in particularly? Do you have Instagram in particularly? Are you presented in social networks?
That we have is essential wood.
А как же быть? У нас время окончилось.
The time is over, unfortunately. The time is over, Anja. Actually, your time is over. It is 1:15 p.m. Please, kindly, we have to finish now. Now it's time to answer the questions, and we have just 3 minutes.
Yes, I will just need 3 more minutes, and then we can do Q&A. Will that be okay? Just let the questions come in, and then I can finish up the presentation, and then we can look at the questions. That is completely fine with me. I just wanted to highlight that woods is definitely coming through. I'll just flip through it just to give you the inspirational direction without going into depth with it. But wood is definitely something that I'm seeing out of Scandinavia being super important in home and interiors. And it's going to be from many different directions. We're seeing whole buildings and whole city areas being built up into complete wood. We're seeing prospects of having wood in the cities, and of course this is a direction where we're seeing that we're missing a lot of the nature in our surroundings. So this is what we're seeing. It's merging through from architecture to interiors and being that. And of course, it's a little bit less textile, but it's important for the textile industry to be aware of this trends. That's why I wanted to bring it along, to see what it is that the textiles will actually have to link up to as this becomes a big part of the home building and the home trends that we're seeing right now. It's very varied, the different kinds of woods that we're using, from plywood, the very simple way, to the more heavier and more exclusive directions within wood interiors. So we're seeing it coming from high-end designers down to low-key, more mainstream directions. So wood is definitely a big inspiration, coming into also some very basic directions. Also coming into smaller interiors, as you're seeing here, being braided and being put into baskets. Is something that we're seeing with this all over wood expression from Axis Gallery by Norm Architects, who are a prominent architect company here in Denmark. Also the craft expression is also what we're seeing within the wood direction, that we can actually carve and do it ourselves. So from that more process direction into the more primitive direction is something we're also seeing it more being more rustic or rustic in the expressions that we have. So we really want that timber to be also visible within the design that we are doing, as you're seeing examples of here, being a little bit more of a primitive setting. The last thing here is that we're seeing also black wood. So as well as the very natural ones, we're seeing black wood as part of this design trend as well, coming into some heavy designs, and that we're seeing that it also comes into both furniture and smaller interior objects that we're putting together. And it could even also be taking up an old technique of burnt wood that can actually impregnate or making the wood even last longer, than we're seeing by the Danish Bjarke Ingels architect, made some boat houses here in a town in Denmark. So definitely a lot of wood is coming through. So that was the 3 trends on the design and the aesthetic side that I have, all together with the direction of the different consumer and trends that I'm seeing in the future. So now I'm all open for questions, if there are any.
Анна, благодарим вас за прекрасное выступление. Было все очень великолепно.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is very full. It is so much information. We have not so much time really, and the next speaker is already waiting. So I will ask you just probably one question, probably the most brilliant question on this online question. What inspires you, or who inspires you among young decorators and designers? Can you share these names with us? Young designers,
Who are my inspiration among young designers? Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I think what young designers are doing is that they start from a clean slate and they take on sustainability in a very new way. It's just an imperative. It's just what they do. So all of those designers working from a fundament of interior design is super interesting. And I can't necessarily mention one of the others, but I think that the young designers are doing massively. I think out of Dutch Design Week, we see really a lot coming through on the Danish design school Kolding and also the Danish design school Via Design. We're seeing that they are really working with sustainable concept, and that is important for design. Design actually needs to help us solve a lot of the sustainable problems.
Благодарим за ответ на этой.
Thank you very much for your answer, and good beginning is a half ending. Now it is the ending of the presentation. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for sharing your ideas with us. Thank you for sharing your presentation with us. That was really very saturated. That was very emotional and very beautiful. Thank you very much indeed, and see you later.